People who can actually afford things feel more financial guilt than people who can't. And that single fact quietly ruins more lives than debt ever will. You have money in your account, the bill is paid, and yet somehow spending still feels wrong. That guilt isn't about math. It's about something much deeper in your psychology. In the next few minutes, you're going to understand exactly where that feeling comes from and why understanding it is the first step to finally being free of it. Scarcity mindset is not just about being broke. It is a psychological operating mode, a lens your brain locks onto when it has learned that resources are unpredictable or limited. And here's the critical part. Once that lens is installed, it does not automatically uninstall when the scarcity disappears. Tunnel, hyper-focusing on protecting what you have, even when what you have is more than enough. You are not being irrational. Your brain is running a very old program, very efficiently. Before you ever earned $1, your brain was already building a financial belief system. Psychologists call these money scripts, the unconscious rules about money you absorbed from watching the adults around you. If you grew up hearing phrases like, "we can't afford that," "money doesn't grow on trees," or watching a parent visibly stress over every purchase, your developing brain filed that away as the truth about how money works. And the brain does not categorize those lessons as opinions, it categorizes them as facts. So even decades later, even with a healthy savings account, your nervous system still flinches at spending because somewhere in your wiring, spending still feels like a threat. Here is something most financial content completely misses. For many people, being careful with money became part of their identity. Being the responsible one, the frugal one, the person who never wastes. That identity was often praised, rewarded, or simply how you survived. And identity is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. When spending money feels like a threat to who you are, not just to your bank account, the guilt becomes almost existential. You are not just buying something. You are threatening a core story you tell yourself about what kind of person you are. Neuroscience gives us a fascinating and somewhat frustrating insight here. The brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, does not update in real time based on your bank balance. It updates based on patterns, and patterns take time and repetition to change. If your brain spent 10, 15, 20 years in a scarcity pattern, it built deep neural grooves around that experience. Seeing your account balance go down, even when you intended it to, can activate the same low-level stress response as an actual financial threat. This is not weakness. This is neuroplasticity working exactly as designed, just lagging behind your actual circumstances. Many chronic spending guilt sufferers share one very specific psychological pattern. They wait for permission to spend. Permission from a partner, from a parent, from some imaginary financial authority figure who will one day declare that it is okay. The problem is that permission never comes because it was never external to begin with. Psychologist Brad Klontz, who studies what he calls money disorders, found that adults with childhood scarcity experiences often externalize financial permission as a way of managing anxiety. If someone else says it is fine, then you cannot be blamed for getting it wrong. Spending becomes safe only when it is not fully your choice. It is important to make one very clear distinction here, because not all financial caution is a psychological wound. There is a meaningful difference between guilt and responsibility. Responsibility says, I am making a thoughtful choice aligned with my values and my actual situation. Guilt says, I am bad for wanting this and I do not deserve to spend. Responsibility feels calm, even when careful. Guilt feels like punishment, even after the purchase is done. If you feel relief when you decide not to buy something, that can be healthy. But if you feel relief only when you deny yourself, that is worth paying attention to. The goal is not to spend more. The goal is to spend freely when spending is right. So what can actually help? The research points to a few key practices. First, name the narrative. When guilt shows up, ask, whose voice is this? Is it yours, or is it an echo from your past? Simply identifying the source can reduce its power significantly. Second, create intentional spending rituals. Instead of impulsive purchases you later feel bad about, try planned spending, where you consciously decide in advance that this purchase is aligned with your values. You are giving yourself internal permission. Third, expose yourself gradually to spending without catastrophe. Buy the thing. Notice that nothing terrible happens. Repeat. This is essentially behavioral therapy applied to your wallet, and it works because it gives your nervous system new data to overwrite the old pattern. Financial guilt when you can actually afford something is not a character flaw. It is a psychological artifact, a feeling that was built in a different time, under different conditions, by a version of you that needed it to survive. Understanding that does not make the guilt vanish overnight, but it changes your relationship to it. You stop taking the guilt as evidence that you are doing something wrong, and you start seeing it for what it is, an old signal in a new world. If this video gave you something to think about, consider subscribing. We explore psychology like this every week in a way that is actually useful to your everyday life.